Welcome to part 3. Clearly this is becoming a every cola ring gets its own video series. So red through black inks are today's topic. I love 2024, or I love ink recapped videos in general. I underestimated how many inks I own currently. I think this is a bit deceiving because some of these shelves are 4 stacked and then 2 high, specifically this top one. So I think it's a bit deceiving how much ink I actually own, but I do apparently own quite a lot of ink. So let's get into the second last cola ring. All right, we are now over at the desk, so let's talk about all of the fabulous reds, oranges, browns, and fabulous grays that make up my ink palette. To start with, we have Sailor Fireplace Hearth. This color's been around for many, many years, and I really like it. I ended up picking up my bottle fairly cheap at the Chicago Pen Show. I didn't know what color was in the box. I picked up one of the old 50 ml bottles that was new old stock, and I'm quite happy with it. I use it all the time, and it's a great red for mixing with. We have Diamine Brilliant Red. I got this color fairly recently. I haven't inked it up, but I am looking forward to inking it up in the next couple weeks. I don't use red inks all that often, but sometimes you do need them. Verde Strawberry Shortcake. Once again, for whatever reason, this ink from Verde does not feather, which is sort of miraculous, and I really like it. There's just something about it that makes me happy. Octopus Fluids Phoenix. I have to say I was disappointed in this. They were so hyped up ink-wise, and mine, I would say Phoenix is like the least fun of all of them. I do want Unicorn or Fairy, but I will probably be selling Phoenix early next year. Algonquin Maple. This is my go-to red ink and has been for about 18 months. I have it in an 85 ml bottle from Ferris Press, and they have just discontinued it. And so I've been on the hunt for a new perfect red, and I think I've got a couple options that I do really like, but there's just something about this red that I adore. This is the Scriptus 2018 ink that I was lucky enough to pick up at our local Pelican Hub in a sample vial. It's super cool, it's super fun. I'm not a huge fan of the kwzl inks. I don't do scented inks, but there is something super fun about this color, and I do like how dark red it is. Private Reserve Vampire Red. I think this one might feather the worst out of any ink I own. There's just something about some of the Private Reserve and Verde and Conklin inks that just like don't play nice with the papers I use, and I need to find other papers. So for now, they sort of sit on the back burner, but hopefully in the next year I'll find papers that work well with them. Candy Marsala from Ferris Press. I have this in a Charger ink sample set, and unfortunately I am probably a kwzl converter away from finishing my sample. I did really love the color. I didn't pick up a bottle of it though, for whatever reason, and they have discontinued the color, and so I'm sort of out of luck. Visconti Sepia, super fun, very nice, sort of middle tone brown. I don't know that I'm going to be picking up a bottle of it, but it is on the short list of potential browns to pick up. Ferris Press Steeped Umber, super pretty. I quite like it. It's got some nice shading. I didn't buy a bottle. I got a sample, and that was enough for me. Ebony from Private Reserve, very pretty dark brown, minimal feathering. I suspect I'll end up getting a bottle at some point. The Ebony line from Private Reserve is apparently quite nice, and I think I'll probably end up trying them all at some point. Robert Oster Melon Tea. I sort of go back and forth about where this ink should belong. It's a very sort of browny green. It might go back to living with the greens next year, who knows. but I do quite like this color. It's got some fun shading to it. I suspect I'll end up getting a bottle. I do quite like the Robert Oster inks, so we'll see. Diamine Moonstone. Love this color. Hate the feathering. It's a super fun color. It just feathers for me, and I wish it didn't, because I do genuinely really like this shade of brown. So I will be, as I said before, investigating other papers. This color from Colorverse I picked up at the Atlas Sidewalk sale. It's very pretty, but I have yet to ink it up in a pen. I sort of feel like I need the right pen for it, and I feel like most of my pens sort of feel too girly for this ink. Diamine Sand Between Your Toes. I actually have 2 dip swatches of this because I've got one from the sample and I've got one from the bottle, but I only have 1 swatch card. I love this ink. It lives in my Golden Gratitude Esty. I suspect it will probably be the only ink that ever goes in that pen, and it's a super fun color, and I'm really grateful I was able to get a bottle of it. Wordsworth in Black, Radiant Yellow. This was a yellow that somebody sent to me. They wanted to know how legible it was. I was able to, or they asked me how legible it was, and I was able to pick up a sample of it. And I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And its swatches on this paper very sort of orangey. It's on this paper very yellow. Private Reserve Buttercup. Love this color, hate the feathering. But I do love this color. And I have done an entire short about how legible of a yellow this is because it's great. Buttered Popcorn. I think everyone in the pen world knows about this color because of Drew Brown. I definitely do. And it was a huge shock to me when Ferris Press suddenly had 2 bottles of it on the Canadian site. I think 2 and a bit years after it had been discontinued. And I snagged one of those bottles, and I wish I'd snagged both because it is a super fun yellow color that I really like. And I sort of can't wait to have it in a pen. It honestly, once I run this pen dry that's eyedroppered, it might be the next color to go in this pen. Because I think it's a pretty good match. Panonia Wasp. Honestly, I quite like this color. I've got it in a sample vial. I suspect I will be getting a bottle of it at some point. I like the Panonia inks. They're great. Mont Verde Mango Moous. For whatever reason, I have Mango Mouse written on this card, but we're going to ignore that. Super fun color. I've got some other yellows that are pretty similar to it, but I do actually really like it. KWZ El Dorito. I love how it looks over here. Pick up the card. I can pick up the card with all of the fun shading. I find you don't get that when you write with it, ever. And I've written with it more than just this, which is disappointing. So I don't know if it's just like the nib and ink combo or what. I've yet to find an ink or a nib combo that it does sort of this sort of shading with. So I need to find a different nib. Monteverde Lion. By far my favorite sort of golden yellow color. My issue with it is the feathering. That being said, I'm sure that I'll find a paper that it works really well on because I do adore this color. Gerban Umber. I love this color. I suspect it might be my first full-size bottle of Gerban because I do really like it. There's just something about like the sort of dusty colors like this that I really enjoy. Sailor Mano Sakira. Love this color. Frequently have this inked up in an architect nib. It's great. I adore it. Ferris Press, definitely peachy. I bought my bottle secondhand, and I'm happy that I have it because it's a fun color, but it is definitely an ink that I'm glad I didn't pay full price for. Golden Gate Glow from Ferris Press. Super fun color. Don't own a bottle of it, but as like oranges go, it's probably one of my favorite oranges. Another ink from Colorverse. This was part of a set. Can we untangle ourselves? We can untangle ourselves. Good for us. This was part of a set, and I haven't inked it up yet. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that it was part of a set, I would probably have traded it already. Because it's not quite my orange. Pumpkin Patch. This swatches really differently on different papers. It's a super fun orange though. And I don't know which paper I like it more on. It's just a fun orange. Private Reserve Orange Crush. This I've got a sample of. It's fun. It feathers a little bit, but not as badly as some of the other Private Reserve colors, and it's sort of great. Verde Fire Opal, same deal, but no feathering, and I definitely need to ink it in a pen. Terracotta Canyon. Here's where we begin, like the colors that I didn't think I'd love that I actually really like, which shocks me. Terracotta Canyon's one of them that I didn't think I was going to like, and then I sort of fell in love with. I've only used it dipped or swatched out and like dipped and doodled with, but there's something about it that I adore and I need to put it in a pen. Diamine Summer Sunsets is something that I only have in a sample vial, and I doubt that I'll be getting a bottle of. Though it is really pretty when you write with it, so who knows? What is going on with this coloring? Sailor X Tinitas, refried beans. One, I love this collaboration. There are some really fun inks in this collab, and I got to try them at the Chicago Pen Show this year. I included them in my inked recapped video from the Chicago Pen Show. And then at the Atlas Sidewalk sale, somebody had samples of refried beans, and I was able to pick one up. And it's super fun. I love the shading in it, and I'm sad that I don't have a bottle of it because I do love the Sailor inks, and I think they do some really unique colors as part of this collaboration. Russet Typecase. This was a color I thought I was going to hate, and I've got it eyedroppered in a Banu. So clearly I quite like it. It's sort of one of those like odd orangey brown colors, but it's leans more brown than orange, and I really, really like it. Autumn and Auburn. Again, we're very yellow on this paper. We're very deep orangey glow brown on that paper. I don't think I've inked this up. I think it's recently an addition to my palette, but I don't think I've inked this up. And oh yeah, no, I got this like a couple weeks ago because it was in clearance. I do really like it though, and I think it'll be inked up soon. Oyster Hour. Super happy I was finally able to get a bottle of this. I love it. I think it's now been discontinued, but it is like a really nice sort of neutral brown. Same with Sesame Oil from London Toolbar. This, once again, sort of had a cult following. It was talked about on a lot of podcasts in the spring and summer, and I was lucky enough to be able to pick up my bottle during an Atlas restock of it, and I have not inked it up yet. I think it'll be in my January inked, but I have used it with my dip pen and with my Kakamori nib. Leadcast. The other potential color for my first full bottle of Jerbon ink. It's so pretty. I love it. I've loved it. I loved it in online samples, and I loved it even more when I actually had a bottle in front of me, or the ink in front of me in a sample. It's just a fun color. Private Reserve Sepia. Once again, we have no feathering, but it's just not my color. I have kept my sample of it though, because it is sort of a unique color in my color palette, and I like keeping inks like that, especially if they're just sample vials, because you never know when you're going to need something sort of odd like it. Diamine Desert Burst. I adore the texture this ink has. I don't know if you can see that on the swatch card. This ink has crazy texture. Does that come out when you write with it? Not really, but it does come out when you do an ink swatch with it. Have I written with this ink? Nope. But I do really enjoy swabs of it. Robert Oster Cafe Crema. This ink looks really different on different paper. This ink also sort of has a cult following. I don't know that I understand the hype, but I've now tried it. I don't think I'll be getting a bottle of it. Ferris Press Writing Desk. I love this color. It's a collaboration with Wonder Pens, one of my favorite pen shops, and it's just such a solid dark brown ink. It's got a nice green sheen to it. I'd say I don't use it on papers where it sheens very often, but I do have this inked up on occasion, and it hasn't been in an inked video in a while because normally it's like a mid-month, oh, I suddenly need a dark color ink up sort of pen situation with this color, but it is fabulous. Birmingham Pen Co. Sterling Silver. I wanted to try this ink for forever, depending on the color, or depending on the paper you put it on. It can be anything from like a pink to a green to like this color of silver. I don't know that I love it enough to get a bottle of it, but I do think it's super cool. Mont Blanc Cool Gray. This is the first Mont Blanc ink I fell in love with. I fell in love with it for a very clear reason. I needed an ink for this pen, which is a Waterman 555 in celluloid with a flex nib in gold, and I needed an ink that was vintage safe and all of those lovely things because I actually use this pen. If you've been around for a long time on this channel, you'll know that I've used that pen quite a lot on this channel. And I wanted a color of ink that I liked that I could commit to having in this pen long term, so that if I didn't get it perfectly clean every time, it would still be fine. And so I did a whole bunch of research on grays that were safe for vintage pens, and then I committed to Mont Blanc Cool Gray. And this was my first Mont Blanc ink, and now I've got several. But I do really like their inks. They're actually probably my favorite ink brand. Just for like basic everyday inks. Because they're no fuss. They're just like basic colors, and sometimes that's just what you want. Mont Blanc Around the World in 80 Days. This is supposedly a brown ink. It's not a brown, but it does do some really fun things. If you put it in a broad or something bigger or something really wet, it sort of does what super granulating watercolors do, where like it separates out into like little pools of different color. It's super fun. That being said, it's not a brown, but I knew that going into it. My store swabbed the bottle for me, and so I knew what I was buying, and I do really like it. Same with Bearington Black, actually. Bearington Black does almost the exact same thing, where it goes down, both of these ink colors actually go down green and then sort of like bloom into the grayish color, which I personally think is super cool. But I would say Bearington Black, to me, isn't actually a black. It's like a dark gray. I do have a bottle of it, though. And then we have Leadcast Letters, which is Mom's ink. I think both of us have the same issue with it, which is we have so many other fantastic grays in my ink collection that it was just sort of a disappointment. Though it looks great here, but like when you start to write with it, it's almost a letdown. Like I wish it had the shading it has over here. And then finally we have Colorverse Matter. I adore this color because when you write with it, you get the same sort of shading it has over here. So it's a great gray that I quite like. I'm a huge fan of gray inks. You will notice though that that's the end. I have no black inks that aren't waterproof because I find them worthless. So I have grays and I have things like that, but I don't do black ink if it's not waterproof. I own one black ink. I guess I own two. I own an ink that claims to be a black that's really a gray. But other than that, Yeah, so there's sort of our color palette, which is quite fun. So I'm sure I missed some of your favorite ink colors, so I would love if you leave them below so I can learn what ink colors in this color palette maybe I should look at for next year. Let me know if I did include your favorites, which I included. And as always, thanks so much for watching.